Today, somebody reached out to me and said, I love my work in mining, but I'm concerned about the environmental impacts. How do you deal with that? Well, that's a valid concern. So here's a few ways that I think through this as a scientist who's worked on the environmental side of mining for almost 2 decades now. The first is I think about where else could we get these things from? So is this an essential activity or is it just a for fun activity? Well, it turns out that mining is very essential. And we couldn't do a lot of things that are good for the environment if we didn't do the mining. For example, wind power, solar power, even agriculture. We can't grow food without mining. Okay, how can we go about it with the least harm possible? Where could we do mining, or how could we do mining in the least detrimental way possible? And that comes down to the practices by which we do mining, maybe alternatives to mining such as recycling and reuse of materials, the potential to extract metals from things like landfill leachate. These are all great initiatives that would decrease our need for mining, but it still can't meet the full need. So we do need to do this. I also think about what is the actual impact, not the perceived impact, but the actual impact of mining compared to other sectors that you don't feel environmentally guilty about. For example, our cities. Our cities don't have to treat the water nearly as clean as a mine does. We let runoff go off of our parking lots directly into rivers. We don't have to have an end-use plan or a habitat compensation plan when we decide to bulldoze land and build houses. These are things that we do every day in mining in Canada, but there's a perception that it's worse than other industries. So there's a perceived impact from mining that is different than the actual impact when we compare it to things like building cities, building infrastructure, or even compare it to agriculture. Agriculture is great. I do like to eat. But there's no end-use plan for that land. The environmental regulations aren't the same. We don't talk about who the original stakeholders were of that land and how they'll be compensated. And we definitely don't talk about the massive amounts of habitat destruction that happen, where we just clear out thousands and millions of acres of land. And I'm not saying that we should be less environmentally concerned about mining. I'm saying that we should apply the same type of scrutiny on all of our day-to-day activities and think about how we're behaving in other areas rather than just pointing a finger. Figuring out, is it an actual environmental impact that we're talking about or a perception of environmental impact? And are we applying equal weighting to that perception on mining and on other types of activities, whether it's resources or our day-to-day lives? The environmental side of mining, absolutely. It does have concerns. Something that we need to work on, and it's something that we are constantly working on improving on with new science and new engineering. Canada is a global leader on that, and we should be damn proud of it.